fully cognizant of what could happen, still bringing their small children on this journey. Is the tipping point the gold rush that really consolidates, or maybe not consolidates, but causes the huge surge of population out west? I always think of that just being a California phenomenon, but does it also go farther up north as well?
Well, I mean, the 49ers, that's clearly specifically, to the San Francisco area. But the tie-in is that the California Trail and the Oregon Trail are the same trail up until Idaho. So, if you're traveling to either of those destinations, you may have people who are going different ways in the same group, because really, for 1,500 miles or so, you're on the same road. And that's why it's sometimes, if you want to talk about, especially Oregon, California, and the Mormon Trail, they all just kind of get lumped together because it's really hard to separate them. It's more like, here's the Oregon Trail, think of it like a really long freeway, and here are some earlier off ramps. You can get off in Salt Lake, or you can take this other road and get off down in California. And then there's the traditional path that ends in the Willamette Valley, towards what would today be the west coast of the United States, up in.
Hey everyone, Scott here. One more brief word from our sponsors. Is that around Portland? Is that right?
It is indeed.
Interesting to think of that one of the hipster capitals of the world, with people having ironic mustaches and doing pedicabs, are the descendants of the hardy pioneers. So
right
here we are today.
One of my buddies from college, I gave him a call because he's from there, born and raised. And I just wanted to get a sense from him. This had nothing to do per se with history, but one of the things I like to do on History That Doesn't Suck is, on occasion where it makes sense, kind of touch on how history is still remembered in the present in areas, in whatever area I'm talking about in the United States. And he readily conceded that, we just don't even think about them. That the culture and whatnot is just so different, that not that they're completely forgotten, but here's a great juxtaposition. I'm in Utah, and in Utah, there's a lot of remembering the Mormon pioneers that settled the state. As people look back to their ancestors, there seems to be just more of a tangible connection that remains. In July, after the 4th of July, we have Pioneer Day. It is a state holiday, and it celebrates the day that the first group of Mormon pioneers showed up in what was going to become Utah. And so my buddy was telling me that Oregon does not have that same sort of tie. That sense of, I guess, feeling connected to it. Although I think you're right. We need to point out that at least the facial hair has stayed about the same.
Yeah, I wonder if pioneers today would be a little confused if they go to Portland and they see people practicing dog acupuncture or ironic adult kickball leagues. So I probably just lost all the Oregon listenership on the podcast, but that's okay.
No, they know we were speaking ironically. It's fine.
Okay, it's out of love. I stayed there for 2 months. Great city. Visit Portland, everyone.
There we go. Look, you just boosted tourism. Come on.
Right.
Yeah, it's all
free
good.
Ad right
it's
there. But I think that does tie into something important, and that leads to, what do you think are the lasting legacies of the Oregon Trail? And it's a very difficult question to say if there is some sort of through line from early 19th century up to the 21st century, as if that somehow has an effect on the 21st century psyche of modern day Oregon. I don't know if we can establish that, but what do you see is the lasting effect of the Oregon Trail, for both good or for ill? Sure.
Well, lasting effect, as you say that, my first thought is ill, but let's talk good as well. I definitely want to make sure we do both. It does, of course, do, what we've also seen in other parts of the United States. It devastates the indigenous peoples as settlers come in and displace them and an original group makes some sort of agreement. In come new settlers. They don't like that agreement. They don't feel bound by it because they didn't make that agreement. So then violence breaks out, and of course, violence begets violence. In California, things are even worse. There's actually state-sanctioned bounties put out on Indians. So, they're literally paying a bounty if you will, if a settler will kill Indians. They're looking to cut down the population. So obviously that's a Pandora's box that it has been opened and can't be changed. So now that I've depressed everyone, we'll swing to the other side. I do think that not necessarily in Oregon. I mean, I feel like the Oregon Trail impacts the whole of the United States, perhaps, and maybe I put too much credence on my one friend's experience. Though I got the impression his was a pretty standard experience, as he mentioned other friends as well. But it is part of what feeds our myth of you can do anything in America. And, that can sometimes set someone up for failure. And it can, at other times, though, be a self-fulfilling prophecy where it gives someone the resolve to reach deeper and stretch themselves and push for something that they otherwise might not have done. This idea of these rugged pioneers who traverse 2,000 miles of wilderness and set up shop. An example, at one point early in the trail, a group makes it to, I want to say it was maybe Fort Hall. It was one of the forts in Idaho. And it was run by the HBC. And there was a Scottish man who was running it. Some of the Americans who stopped there, they asked if wagons could be taken all the way to Oregon, because it had been done the year before, but it wasn't really well established yet. And he had told the same group, or excuse me, not the same group. He had told last year's group, you cannot do that. No one can take a wagon all the way to Oregon. That's just not possible. That is literally defying human ability. And of course they did it, right? They got their wagons there. And he responded to this group and said, the answer is no, but you damned Yankees will do whatever you like. And I feel like that is something that, we've kind of continued to maintain as a spirit, is this sense and belief, whether we're right or wrong, that we can do whatever we like, whatever we set our mind to. I think that's where you get, such as, my town that I live in here. I mean, we've got, you go to downtown, we kind of look like the Simpsons a little bit. It's not Jebediah Springfield, but we've got our statues of original pioneers, showing up here. And
I don't know if that statue has the quote, a noble spirit embiggens the smallest man, like in the Simpsons, even though that's not a real word. It's been given to us. So, all right. So the spirit is still there in your town.
It is. And maybe the quote isn't there, but I feel nobly embiggened every day.
Okay.
So there's that.
Okay. So
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
Well, all right. So that is the embiggening of the human or of the American spirit is what the Oregon Trail did give to us. Well, thank you for doing this overview. And I know you have an episode on this very topic on your show. So what does your show cover? And if people want to find it online, where can they find it?
Yeah. So thanks, Scott. My show's called History That Doesn't Suck. Clearly, I feel that it's acceptable history. It does not suck. And basically, it's a survey of U.S. history, and I weave stories into everything that you need. As one of my listeners put it, and I really appreciated this, it's like eating ice cream, but it tastes like ice cream, but it's like eating your vegetables. I take everything that you should know for maybe even an AP exam, and I weave in personal stories so that I can tell you, say, about tax laws. But you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about the trouble Patrick Henry's getting himself into. So I started with the American Revolution. Episode 1 begins with George Washington as a young punk kid getting himself into trouble out in the Ohio and starting basically the French and Indian War. And we've just continued right along. You, I believe, have heard the episode that we did on the Oregon Trail. We've just finished the Mexican-American War and are now building up to the Civil War. So that's where we're at. You can find it on iTunes, Podcast Addict, kind of all the typical places, and also on our website, historythatdoesn'tsuck.com. So, all the usual places. And if you're interested in following us on social media, we're on, all the usuals. Just search for History That Doesn't Suck. You'll find us.
All right, great. And if people want to find those links, they'll be included in the show notes for this episode. Greg, thank you for joining us. Well, that's all I have for today. There's probably a million other things that could be said, but I think this is a good stopping point. As always, I want to thank the Knowlton's Rangers, especially our spy masters. Tyler from Colorado, Josh Reddick, Baron Fraser, Chris from Maine, Carl from Norway, Moondoggy from Ohio, Rick Knowlton, Vic and Irene, Mike from New York, Michelle, and Marlene. I'll explain what that is in a second. If you like the show and want to help it grow, there are 4 easy ways for you to do it. 1, like and subscribe to the show on the podcast player of your choice. This helps spread the word about the show. 2, join our Facebook group. Here we can keep the discussion going about new episodes, and you can talk about what you like and didn't like. And you can find this group if you just search for History Unplugged on Facebook. 3, we have an online store with t-shirts, phone covers, and other accessories featuring awesomely bad history puns that were crowdsourced by you, the audience. And you can find that if you go to teespring.com/stores/history-unplugged. That's teespring.com/stores/history-unplugged. 4, and this is really the best way to dive deep with History Unplugged, and that's to become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. If you know your American history, you know the Knowlton's Rangers were an elite spy and reconnaissance group in the American Revolutionary War, but it's also the name of the membership program of History Unplugged. You can join at 3 levels. If you join at the level of Scout, you can hear all the episodes of History Unplugged completely ad-free and get early access to new episodes, at least a week early. If you join at the Intelligence Officer level, you get special bonus episodes, like a 10-part series on the World War II hero Audie Murphy, a multi-part series called Ottoman Lives about different people in the Ottoman Empire, and a series called Rendezvous with Death that looks at biographical profiles of Americans who went to fight in World War I before America entered the war. The last level is Spy Master, where you get all that stuff, but you also get 3 hardcover history books, Forging a President, How the Wild West Created Teddy Roosevelt, Race to the Top of the World, Richard Byrd and the First Flight to the North Pole, and The Last Fighter Pilot, the true story of the final combat mission of World War II. Another bonus is, you can choose a history topic for me to focus on for an entire episode that can go up to an hour, and I'll answer whatever question you have for me, and you get a shout out at the end of each episode. If you want to learn how to become a member of the Knowlton's Rangers, go to patreon.com/unplugged. That's patreon.com/unplugged. All right, well, that is all for my spiel. Thanks for listening to the History Unplugged podcast, from ancient Greece to the Cold War and everything else in between. See you next time.